A mother of two little kids is fired for helping a millionaire. Next day, she gets a stunning surprise she'll never forget. The insistent buzz of the alarm clock pierced through Julie's fitful sleep for the third time. With a groan, she forced, her eyes open, immediately wincing at the dull throb pulsing behind her temples. The digital display glared accusingly. 5:30 a.m. February's chill seeped through the thin walls of her small apartment, making her shiver as she reluctantly pushed aside the warmth of her blanket. As Julie swung her feet to the cold floor, the events of the previous night came flooding back. Her youngest daughter, 7-year-old Beatrice, had spent hours crying in her arms, plagued by nightmares and worries far beyond her years. Julie's heart ached at the memory of her child's tear-stained face, whimpering about monsters under the bed, and the very real fear of not having enough food for lunch at school. Pushing aside her own exhaustion, Julie made her way to the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face in a futile attempt to wash away the fatigue etched into her features. The mirror reflected a woman she barely recognized anymore. Dark circles under her eyes, worry lines creasing her forehead, and a weariness that seemed to have settled into her very bones. As she pulled on her worn uniform for the best coffee shop, Julie's gaze fell on the stack of unpaid bills on her dresser. The rent was overdue. The electricity company had sent a final warning, and the refrigerator was growing emptier by the day. The weight of her responsibilities pressed down on her shoulders, threatening to crush her spirit entirely. But she couldn't afford to give in to despair. Her daughters, Beatrice and 10-year-old Sophia, depended on her. With a deep breath, Julie straightened her shoulders and affixed a determined expression to her face. It was just another day, another shift at the coffee shop. She had to keep going, had to keep fighting for a better life for her girls. As she quietly crept out of the apartment, careful not to wake her sleeping children, Julie allowed herself one moment of vulnerability. She leaned her forehead against the closed door, whispering a silent prayer for strength, for resilience, for just one break in the relentless struggle that had become her life. Little did Julie know that this ordinary February morning would be the day everything changed. As she stepped out into the pre-dawn darkness, hurrying towards the bus stop, the universe was already setting in motion a series of events that would test her courage, challenge her convictions, and ultimately offer her a chance at a new beginning. The first light of dawn was just beginning to streak across the sky, a fitting metaphor for the glimmer of hope that was about to enter Julie's world, if only she had the strength to reach out and grasp it. The fluorescent lights of the best coffee shop buzzed overhead as Julie tied her apron with practiced efficiency. The aroma of freshly ground beans filled the air, a scent that used to bring her comfort, but now only served as a reminder of the grueling hours that lay ahead. She barely had time to gulp down a sip of water before the first customers began trickling in, their faces a blur of morning grumpiness and caffeine desperation. As Julie moved behind the counter, she caught sight of her co-worker Megan shooting her a sympathetic glance. They had started at the coffee shop around the same time, both single mothers trying to make ends meet. Over the months they had formed a quiet alliance, covering for each other when family emergencies arose and offering silent support during particularly trying shifts. "Rough night," Megan murmured as they passed each other, balancing trays of pastries and steaming mugs. Julie managed a wan smile. "Beatrice couldn't sleep, you know how it goes." Megan nodded in understanding, her own eyes reflecting a similar weariness. "Hang in there, Jules. We've got this." Their moment of camaraderie was abruptly shattered by the impatient tapping of fingers on the counter. Julie turned to face a man in an expensive suit, his expression a mix of irritation and condescension. "Finally, huh?" he sneered, checking his watch pointedly. "If you're having trouble keeping up, maybe this job isn't for you." Julie felt the familiar sting of humiliation burning in her chest, but she forced her lips into a polite smile. "I apologize for the wait, sir. What can I get for you today?" As she took his order, a complicated multi-shot espresso concoction that he rattled off with the air of someone who enjoyed making things difficult, Julie couldn't help but wonder if he had any idea of the lives of the people serving him. Did he ever stop to think about the stories behind the name tags, the dreams deferred, the struggles hidden behind forced smiles? The morning rush blurred into a cacophony of hissing espresso machines, clinking cups, and the constant murmur of conversations. Julie moved on autopilot, taking orders, making change, and crafting drinks with a precision born of repetition. Yet with each interaction, she felt a little piece of herself slipping away, worn down by the relentless tide of demands and the occasional cutting remark from an impatient customer. During a rare lull, Julie found herself gazing out the shop's large front window. Across the street, a group of business people strode purposefully along the sidewalk, their designer clothes and confident demeanors a stark contrast to the world inside the coffee shop. For a moment, Julie allowed herself to imagine a different life, one where she walked among them, heading to a job that valued her intelligence and determination, able to provide for her daughters without the constant fear of financial ruin. The fantasy was shattered by the chime of the door opening. Julie straightened, plastering on her customer service smile once more. As she turned to greet the new arrival, she had no way of knowing that this seemingly ordinary customer would be the catalyst for extraordinary change in her life. A man entered, dressed simply in jeans and a nondescript jacket. There was nothing particularly remarkable about his appearance, yet something in his demeanor caught Julie's attention. He moved with a quiet confidence, his eyes taking in the bustling cafe with keen interest. As he approached the counter, Julie felt an inexplicable sense that this encounter would be different from the hundreds of others she experienced each day. "Good morning," the man said, his voice warm and lacking the impatience she had come to expect. "Could I get a black coffee and a slice of apple pie, please?" As Julie rang up his order, she found herself wondering about this man's story. What brought him to the best coffee shop on this particular morning? What lay behind the kindness in his eyes and the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth? Little did she know, this unassuming customer would soon become the key to unlocking a future she had scarcely dared to imagine. As Julie handed him his coffee and pie, neither of them could have predicted the events that were about to unfold, events that would test Julie's courage, challenge her convictions, and ultimately offer her a chance at a new beginning. The morning at the best coffee shop had settled into its usual rhythm when the calm was suddenly shattered by the arrival of a boisterous group of teenagers. The door flew open with a bang, admitting 5 young men who swaggered in as if they owned the place. Their laughter was too loud, their movements too aggressive, and the tinny sound of music blaring from a phone without headphones immediately set Julie's nerves on edge. She exchanged a worried glance with Megan as the group sprawled across several tables, dragging chairs with a screech that made several customers wince. Julie's heart sank as she watched the teens' behavior escalate from merely disruptive to actively problematic. One of the boys, a lanky youth with spiky hair, reached over to a nearby table and snatched a handful of sugar packets. With a mocking grin, he tore them open and dumped the contents on the floor, laughing at the mess he'd created. "Hey, check this out," he called to his friends, clearly reveling in the shocked expressions of the other patrons. Another member of the group, emboldened by his friend's actions, slammed his hand down on the table of an elderly gentleman, causing the man's coffee cup to teeter dangerously. The old man's face paled, his hands shaking as he steadied his drink. Julie felt her pulse quickening, a mix of anger and anxiety churning in her stomach. She looked around desperately, hoping someone would step in to control the situation, but the other customers were pointedly avoiding eye contact, shrinking into their seats, as if trying to make themselves invisible. Her gaze fell on her manager, Mr. Thompson, who was peering out from behind the safety of the counter. Their eyes met, and Julie silently pleaded for him to do something, to assert some authority. But Mr. Thompson merely shook his head slightly, his message clear: "Don't get involved." The tension in the cafe continued to build as the teenagers grew bolder, encouraged by the lack of resistance. Julie's hands clenched into fists at her sides, her mind racing. She knew she should stay quiet, keep her head down, do nothing to jeopardize her desperately needed job. But every instinct in her body was screaming at her to act, to protect the customers who were being terrorized. It was then that the leader of the group, a stocky boy with a predatory grin, noticed the plainly dressed man who had ordered the black coffee and apple pie. Something about the man's calm demeanor seemed to offend the teenager. who sauntered over with an exaggerated swagger. "Look, guys," he called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "Is this what rich people eat? How boring." With a careless swipe of his hand, he knocked the slice of pie off the plate, scattering crumbs and filling across the table. The other boys hooted with laughter, gathering around to join in the harassment. Julie watched in disbelief as the situation spiraled out of control. The plainly dressed man remained surprisingly composed, responding to the taunts with a quiet firmness that seemed to only further agitate the teenagers. They pressed closer, their body language growing increasingly threatening. In that moment, Julie knew she had a choice to make. She could remain silent, preserving her job but betraying her own sense of right and wrong. Or she could take a stand, risking everything but staying true to the values she wanted to instill in her daughters. Taking a deep breath, Julie stepped out from behind the counter. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat, but her voice was steady as she addressed the group. "This is a place for everyone to relax," she said, injecting as much authority into her tone as she could muster. "If you're not here to eat something, I'm going to have to ask you to respect the other customers, or leave." The cafe fell silent, all eyes turning to Julie. She could feel the weight of their stares, the surprise from the regular customers, the warning glare from her manager, and the challenging smirks of the teenagers. In that moment, standing alone against the chaos, Julie felt more exposed and vulnerable than she ever had before. But she also felt something else stirring within her, a sense of purpose, of righteous indignation, of the courage she had always hoped to embody for her daughters. As the leader of the group turned to face her, his expression a mixture of amusement and menace, Julie steeled herself for whatever came next. Little did she know, her act of bravery was about to set in motion a chain of events that would change the course of her life forever. The leader of the teenage group clapped his hands slowly, a mocking smile playing across his face as he approached Julie. The other patrons in the cafe seemed to collectively hold their breath, the tension in the air palpable. "Look, guys," the boy sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "The girl wants to play hero. What are you going to do if we don't leave, huh? Call the cops?" Julie's heart raced, but she stood her ground, lifting her chin defiantly. "If that's what it takes to ensure the safety and comfort of our customers, then yes, that's exactly what I'll do." A flicker of uncertainty passed through the boy's eyes, quickly replaced by bravado. He leaned in closer, his breath hot on Julie's face. "You don't have the guts," he hissed. Just then, the unmistakable wail of police sirens cut through the air outside the cafe. The group of teenagers froze, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning realization. Julie felt a surge of relief wash over her. She had indeed called the authorities when the situation first began to escalate, trusting her instincts that intervention would be necessary. 2 police officers entered the best coffee shop, their presence immediately commanding attention. The group of teenagers began to disperse, trying to blend in with the other customers, but it was too late. "What seems to be the problem here?" one of the officers asked, his gaze sweeping the cafe before settling on Julie. With a steady voice, Julie recounted the events that had transpired. As she spoke, she could see the plainly dressed man nodding in agreement, corroborating her story. Other customers, emboldened by the police presence, began to speak up as well, describing the teenagers' disruptive behavior. The officers listened attentively, then turned to the group of young men. "All right, boys," the second officer said firmly. "I think it's time for you to leave. We'll be escorting you out and having a chat with your parents about appropriate behavior in public spaces." As the teenagers were led out of the cafe, one of them, the leader who had confronted Julie, turned back with a venomous glare. "This isn't over," he spat, his words carrying a clear threat. Julie felt a chill run down her spine, but she refused to show any fear. She watched as the police officers guided the group outside, providing statements and contact information for any potential follow-up. As the commotion died down and the cafe began to return to its normal rhythm, Julie became acutely aware of the stares from the other customers. Some looked at her with admiration, others with curiosity, and a few with what seemed like disapproval for having escalated the situation. She turned to head back behind the counter, her legs feeling surprisingly weak now that the adrenaline was wearing off. But before she could take more than a few steps, she felt a hand on her arm. It was the plainly dressed man, the one whose pie had been knocked to the floor. "Thank you," he said softly, his eyes filled with genuine gratitude. "What you did took real courage. Not many people would have stood up like that." Julie felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel proud of her actions, to revel in the knowledge that she had made a difference, however small. But the moment was short-lived. From the corner of her eye, she saw Mr. Thompson emerging from behind the counter, his face a thundercloud of barely contained fury. The reality of what she had done, and what it might cost her, came crashing down. "Julie!" Mr. Thompson's voice was low and controlled, but she could hear the anger simmering beneath the surface. "My office now." As she followed her manager to the back of the cafe, Julie caught one last glimpse of the plainly dressed man. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, part concern, part admiration, and something else, something that looked almost like curiosity. Little did Julie know, this man's interest in her actions would soon become the key to unlocking a future she had scarcely dared to imagine. But for now, all she could focus on was the sinking feeling in her stomach as she prepared to face the consequences of her brave stand. The door to Mr. Thompson's office closed with a soft click that seemed to echo in Julie's ears like a gunshot. She stood rigidly before his desk, her hands clasped tightly behind her back to hide their trembling. The small room, with its outdated motivational posters and the lingering smell of stale coffee, suddenly felt suffocating. Mr. Thompson lowered himself into his creaky office chair, fixing Julie with a hard stare. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken accusations and disappointment. Finally he spoke, his voice low and controlled. "What do you think you were doing out there, Julie?" She took a deep breath, willing her voice to remain steady. "I was protecting our customers, sir. Those boys were causing trouble and making everyone uncomfortable. Someone had to do something." Mr. Thompson's face flushed with anger. "You're not paid to be a hero," he snapped, his composure cracking. "You're paid to wait tables, to serve coffee, to keep your head down and do your job. If you want to save the world, do it on your own time." Julie felt a surge of indignation rise within her. "But sir, it is my job to ensure our customers have a good experience. How could I just stand by and—" "Enough!" Mr. Thompson cut her off, slamming his hand on the desk. "Do you have any idea what kind of liability you've opened us up to? Those kids could sue us for discrimination. Their parents could make a scene. And don't even get me started on the other customers whose morning was disrupted because you decided to play vigilante." Julie's heart sank as she realized the full implications of her actions. She hadn't considered how her intervention might be perceived by others, or the potential legal ramifications for the coffee shop. The weight of her responsibilities, her daughters, the bills, the constant struggle to stay afloat, pressed down on her with renewed force. I'm sorry," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just wanted to help." Mr. Thompson's expression softened slightly, but his words remained firm. "I know you meant well, Julie, but good intentions don't pay the bills or keep this business running. We can't afford to have employees who can't follow simple instructions and stay out of trouble." Julie felt her stomach drop, sensing what was coming next. "Mr. Thompson, please, I need this job. My girls—" He held up a hand, silencing her plea. "I'm sorry, Julie, but I can't overlook this. You're fired. Clear out your locker and turn in your uniform by the end of the day." The words hit Julie like a physical blow. She stood there, stunned, as the reality of her situation crashed over. Her fired, unemployed. How would she pay the rent? How would she feed her daughters? As if from a great distance, she heard herself asking, Can I at least finish my shift? I need the hours." Mr. Thompson shook his head. "It's best if you leave now. We'll mail you your final paycheck." In a daze, Julie made her way out of the office. The bustling sounds of the cafe seemed muffled, as if she were underwater. She could feel the stares of her co-workers, and the customers, some curious, others pitying. As she gathered her few belongings from her locker, She caught sight of Megan, who mouthed a silent, "I'm sorry," from across the room. Julie changed out of her uniform mechanically, her mind racing with calculations. How long could she stretch her meager savings? Would she be able to find another job quickly? The thought of facing her daughters, of having to explain why Mommy wouldn't be going to work anymore, brought a lump to her throat. As she made her way towards the exit, Julie passed by the table where the plainly dressed man still sat. Their eyes met briefly, and she saw a flicker of concern cross his face. For a moment she was tempted to stop, to explain, to seek some kind of validation for her actions. But the weight of her failure pressed her forward, and she hurried out of the cafe without a backwards glance. The February chill bit into her as she stepped onto the street, no longer protected by the warmth of the coffee shop or the security of employment. Julie wrapped her arms around herself, as much for comfort as for warmth, and began the long walk home. With each step, the reality of her situation became clearer, and the fear of an uncertain future grew stronger. Little did Julie know, as she trudged home with the weight of the world on her shoulders, that the universe was already setting in motion events that would change the course of her life. The plainly dressed man watched her leave, a thoughtful expression on his face, before pulling out his phone and making a call. The wheels of fate had begun to turn, leading Julie towards a destiny she could never have imagined. The days following, Julie's dismissal from the best coffee shop blurred together in a haze of worry and increasingly desperate attempts to find new employment. She scoured online job boards, pounded the pavement handing out resumes, and reached out to every contact she could think of. But in a tough economy, with her limited education and the stigma of being fired from her last position, Julie found herself facing rejection after rejection. As the week wore on, the atmosphere in their small apartment grew increasingly tense. Julie did her best to shield Sophia and Beatrice from the full extent of their troubles, but children have a way of sensing when something is wrong. She caught Sophia eyeing the dwindling contents of their refrigerator with concern, and Beatrice's nightmares seemed to increase in frequency. One evening, after tucking the girls into bed with forced cheerfulness and promises that everything would be all right, Julie sat at their tiny kitchen table, surrounded by past due notices and calculator in hand. The numbers refused to add up, no matter how many times she went over them. The rent was due in less than a week and they were already behind on utilities. The small emergency fund she had painstakingly built up over the years was rapidly dwindling. Julie buried her face in her hands, allowing herself a moment of despair. How had things gone so wrong so quickly? She thought back to that fateful morning at the coffee shop, replaying the events in her mind. Had she done the right thing by standing up to those troublemakers? The memory of the grateful looks from the other customers, the quiet "thank you" from the plainly dressed man, they had seemed so important at the time. But now, faced with the very real possibility of not being able to provide for her daughters, Julie found herself questioning her actions. A soft sound from the doorway made her look up. Sophia stood there in her pajamas, her young face creased with worry. "Mom, are you okay?" Julie quickly wiped away the tears she hadn't realized were falling and forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. I'm just doing some grown-up work. You should be in bed." Sophia padded over to the table, her eyes taking in the scattered bills and her mother's red-rimmed eyes. With a wisdom beyond her years, she asked, "Is it because you lost your job? Are we going to be okay?" The lump in Julie's throat threatened to choke her. She pulled Sophia into a tight hug, as much to comfort herself as her daughter. "We're going to be fine, baby. I promise. Mommy's just figuring some things out. But you don't need to worry." As she held her daughter, Julie felt a renewed sense of determination wash over her. She couldn't give up. For the sake of her girls, she had to keep fighting, had to find a way through this crisis. She would take any job, work any hours necessary to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. The next morning, Julie woke early, her resolve strengthened by the night's reflections. She dressed carefully in her best outfit, a simple blouse and skirt combo that had seen better days but was still presentable. Today she would expand her job search, looking into positions she might have previously overlooked, anything to bring in some income. As she prepared a meager breakfast for the girls, Julie's mind raced with possibilities. Perhaps she could pick up some cleaning jobs, or look into overnight stocking positions at the big box stores. It wouldn't be ideal, especially with childcare to consider, but they were running out of options. Julie was so lost in thought that she almost missed the sound of a car pulling up outside their apartment. Curious, she peered out the window, her heart skipping a beat at the sight of a sleek black luxury vehicle parked at the curb. For a wild moment, she feared it might be a debt collector, or perhaps the landlord coming to evict them early. With trembling hands, she opened the door at the sound of a firm knock. Her eyes widened in shock as she recognized the man standing on her doorstep. It was the plainly dressed customer from the coffee shop, the one whose pie had been knocked to the floor by the troublemakers. But now, dressed in an impeccable suit that spoke of wealth and influence, she realized he was far more than the simple patron she had taken him for. "Good morning, Julie," he said, his voice kind, but carrying an undercurrent of authority. "I was hoping we could talk. May I come in?" Julie stood frozen for a moment, her mind struggling to process this unexpected turn of events. Finally, she found her voice. Yes, of course. Please come in." As she stepped aside to allow him entry, Julie couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the precipice of something monumental. Little did she know, this surprise visit was about to open the door to possibilities she had never dared to imagine. Julie's small living room seemed to shrink even further in the presence of her unexpected visitor. The man, whose name she realized with embarrassment she still didn't know, took in the modest surroundings with a neutral expression that betrayed neither judgment nor pity. Julie self-consciously smoothed her skirt, acutely aware of the worn furniture and the faint smell of last night's budget dinner still lingering in the air. "Please have a seat," she offered, gesturing to the threadbare couch. "Can I get you anything, water or—" She trailed off, realizing she had little else to offer. The man smiled warmly, easing some of her tension. "Water would be fine, thank you." As Julie busied herself in the kitchenette, her mind raced. Why was he here? How had he found her? And most pressingly, what did he want? Returning with 2 glasses of water, she settled into the armchair across from her visitor, perched on the edge as if ready to flee at a moment's notice. "I'm sure you're wondering why I'm here," the man began, his tone gentle but direct. "First, allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Robert Thornton. I'm the CEO of Thornton Enterprises." Julie's eyes widened in recognition. Thornton Enterprises was a multinational corporation known for its innovative technology and philanthropic efforts. She had read about their charitable work in the local papers, never imagining she'd come face to face with the man behind it all. "I want to thank you for your courage that day in the coffee shop," Robert continued. "What you did was remarkable, especially considering the personal risk involved." Julie felt a flush of embarrassment mixed with a twinge of pain at the memory. "Fat lot of good it did me," she murmured, then immediately regretted her candor. Robert leaned forward, his expression serious. "On the contrary, it's precisely that kind of integrity and bravery that caught my attention. You see, Julie, I was there that day for a reason. I often visit local businesses incognito to get a feel for the community and the people in it. I'm always on the lookout for individuals who embody the values that Thornton Enterprises stands for." Julie's heart began to race, hardly daring to hope where this conversation might be leading. "I run a charitable foundation as part of our corporate social responsibility initiatives," Robert explained. "We're always in need of people with strong moral compasses and the courage to stand up for what's right. People like you, Julie." He paused, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. "I'd like to offer you a position with our foundation. It would involve overseeing some of our local outreach programs, working directly with the communities we serve." Julie sat in stunned silence, her mind struggling to process what she was hearing. A job offer? From the CEO of a major corporation? It seemed too good to be true. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "I'm honored, truly. But Mr. Thornton, I don't have the qualifications for something like that. I'm just a single mom who used to serve coffee." Robert shook his head, a small smile playing at his lips. "You're selling yourself short, Julie. The qualities I'm looking for can't be taught in a classroom or listed on a resume. Compassion, integrity, the willingness to stand up for others, these are rare and valuable traits. Everything else we can teach you." He leaned back, his expression turning thoughtful. "I'm offering you more than just a job, Julie. I'm offering you a chance to make a real difference, to be part of something bigger than yourself. And of course, the position comes with a salary and benefits package that I think you'll find quite generous." Julie's mind whirled with the possibilities. A stable job, a chance to help others, the ability to provide for her daughters without constant fear. And struggle. It was everything she had ever dreamed of, wrapped up in an offer that had appeared out of nowhere. But a small voice of doubt nagged at her. "Why me?" she asked softly. "Surely there are more qualified people out there." Robert's gaze was steady and sincere. "Because in that moment in the coffee shop, when it mattered most, you chose to do the right thing despite the personal cost. That's the kind of person I want working with me, Julie. Someone who leads with their heart and stands by their principles." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder, placing it on the coffee table between them. "Here's all the information about the position, including the job description and compensation details. Take some time to think it over. Discuss it with your family. We can meet again in a few days to talk more if you're interested." As Robert stood to leave, Julie found herself rising as well, her legs slightly unsteady. "Mr. Thornton," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you for this opportunity." He smiled, warm and genuine. "You can thank me by considering the offer seriously. And Julie, whatever you decide, never lose that courage of yours. It's a rare and precious thing." With that, he was gone, leaving Julie standing in her living room, the folder on the coffee table like a lifeline to a future she had scarcely dared to imagine. As the reality of what had just transpired began to sink in, Julie felt a bubble of hope rising in her chest, a feeling she had almost forgotten. For the first time in what felt like ages, Julie allowed herself to smile, to truly believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right after all. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of emotion and intense deliberation for Julie. The folder Mr. Thornton had left sat on her coffee table, simultaneously a beacon of hope and a source of anxiety. Each time she opened it, poring over the details of the job offer, she felt a dizzying mix of excitement and trepidation. The position itself was more than she could have ever dreamed of: Program Coordinator for Thornton Enterprises Community Outreach Initiative. The job description spoke of organizing local charity events, overseeing scholarship programs for underprivileged youth, and coordinating with local businesses to create job opportunities. It was meaningful work, the kind that could make a real difference in people's lives. And the salary? Julie's breath caught every time she looked at the number. It was more than triple what she had been making at the coffee shop. The benefits package included health insurance, a retirement plan, and even provisions for continuing education. It was stability, security, a chance to give her daughters the life she had always wanted for them. But doubt continued to gnaw at her. Was she really qualified for such a position? Could she handle the responsibilities? And what if she failed, letting down not only herself and her girls, but also Mr. Thornton and all the people who would be counting on her? On the evening before she was due to meet with Mr. Thornton again, Julie sat at the kitchen table long after Sophia and Beatrice had gone to bed. She had made pro-con lists, researched Thornton Enterprises extensively online, and even reached out to a former co-worker who had some experience in the non-profit sector for advice. Still, she felt torn. The practical side of her knew this was an opportunity she couldn't afford to pass up. But another part of her, the part that had always played it safe and stuck to what she knew, was terrified of taking such a big leap. Lost in thought, Julie didn't notice Sophia padding into the kitchen until her daughter spoke. "Mom, are you okay?" Julie looked up, startled. "Sophia, honey, what are you doing up?" Sophia shrugged, climbing into the chair next to her mother. "Couldn't sleep. Are you still thinking about that job?" Julie nodded, marveling not for the first time at how perceptive her eldest could be. "I am, sweetie. It's a big decision." Sophia was quiet for a moment, her young face scrunched in concentration. You always tell us to be brave and to help others when we can, she said finally. Isn't that what this job is about? The simple wisdom of her daughter's words hit Julie like a thunderbolt. She had been so caught up in her own fears and insecurities that she had lost sight of what really mattered. This wasn't just about her. It was about setting an example for her girls, about showing them that it was possible to pursue your dreams and make a difference in the world. You're right, Sophia, Julie said softly, pulling her daughter into a hug. Sometimes Mom needs a reminder to follow her own advice. As she held Sophia close, Julie felt a sense of clarity washing over her. She knew what she had to do. The next morning, Julie arrived at the local diner where she had agreed to meet Mr. Thornton, her decision made and her resolve firm. She spotted him at a corner booth, his pleasant smile a welcome sight. "Good morning, Julie," he greeted her warmly. "I hope you've had enough time to consider the offer." Julie took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "I have, Mr. Thornton, and I've decided to accept." The words hung in the air for a moment, and Julie felt as if she had just stepped off a cliff, but instead of falling, she felt as if she were flying. Mr. Thornton's smile widened. "I'm very glad to hear that, Julie. I think you're going to do great things with us." As they shook hands to seal the agreement, Julie felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. Julie's first day at Thornton Enterprises arrived with a mixture of excitement and nervousness that made her feel like a schoolgirl on the first day of class. She stood before the mirror, smoothing down her new blouse, a small splurge she had allowed herself to mark this new chapter in her life. The face that looked back at her seemed different somehow, filled with a hope and determination she hadn't seen in years. "Mom, you look beautiful," Sophia said from the doorway, Beatrice nodding enthusiastically beside her. Julie turned to her daughters, her heart swelling with love and pride. "Thank you, sweethearts. Are you sure you're okay with Mrs. Martinez watching you after school until I get home?" The girls nodded, excitement shining in their eyes. They had been nearly as thrilled about Julie's new job as she was, already dreaming of the new possibilities it might bring. "We'll be fine, Mom," Sophia assured her. "You're going to do great." With a final hug and kiss for each of her girls, Julie set off for her new adventure. The Thornton Enterprises building loomed before her, its sleek glass exterior reflecting the morning sun. Julie took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked through the front doors. The lobby was a hive of activity, people in suits, hurrying in every direction. Julie approached the reception desk, where a friendly-faced woman greeted her. "Good morning, you must be Julie. I'm Sarah. Mr. Thornton asked me to show you to your office." Julie blinked in surprise. "My office?" Sarah smiled knowingly. "First day jitters. Don't worry, you'll settle in no time. Follow me." As they rode the elevator to the 15th floor, Sarah chatted amiably about the company and the people Julie would be working with. Julie listened intently, trying to absorb every detail. The elevator doors opened to reveal a bustling, open-plan office space. Sarah led Julie through a maze of desks and meeting rooms until they reached a door with a small nameplate, "Julie Alvarez, Program Coordinator." "Here we are," Sarah said, pushing open the door. "Your new home away from home." Julie stepped into the office, her eyes wide as she took in the space. It wasn't large, but it was bright and modern, with a window offering a stunning view of the city. A sleek desk dominated one wall, while a small seating area with a couch and coffee table occupied another corner. "This is mine?" Julie asked, still not quite believing it. Sarah nodded, grinning. "All yours. Mr. Thornton will be by in about an hour to go over your first assignments. In the meantime, feel free to settle in and familiarize yourself with the systems. Your login information is in the welcome packet on your desk." As Sarah left, closing the door behind her, Julie sank into the comfortable office chair. She ran her hands over the smooth surface of the desk, marveling at how far she had come in such a short time. From struggling single mother to having her own office in a prestigious company, it felt like a dream. But as she booted up her computer and began to explore the files and programs she'd be working with, Julie felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about having a nice office or a better paycheck. This was about making a real difference in people's lives, about creating opportunities for others the way Mr. Thornton had done for her. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mr. Thornton entered, his warm smile immediately putting Julie at ease. "Good morning, Julie. How are you settling in?" "It's wonderful, Mr. Thornton. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity." He waved away her thanks. "You've earned this, Julie. Now are you ready to get started? We have some exciting projects I'd like you to take the lead on." As Mr. Thornton began outlining the community initiatives Julie would be overseeing, her mind raced with ideas and possibilities. She found herself contributing suggestions, drawing on her own experiences as a struggling single mother to identify areas where they could make the most impact. Mr. Thornton listened attentively, nodding and making notes. "This is exactly why I wanted you for this position, Julie," he said when she had finished. "Your perspective is invaluable. I have a feeling you're going to do great things here." As the day progressed, Julie threw herself into her new role with enthusiasm. She met with her team, began mapping out strategies for upcoming events, and even started brainstorming ideas for a new scholarship program aimed at single parents trying to further their education. By the time she left the office that evening, Julie felt a deep sense of satisfaction and purpose. As she walked to the bus stop, her step was lighter than it had been in years. She couldn't wait to get home and tell her girls about her day, to show them that with hard work and perseverance, dreams really could come true. Little did Julie know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would not only transform her own life, but touch the lives of countless others in ways she could never have imagined. As weeks turned into months, Julie found herself fully immersed in her new role at Thornton Enterprises. The learning curve had been steep, but she attacked each challenge with determination and creativity. Her unique perspective as someone who had struggled firsthand with the issues they were trying to address proved invaluable in shaping their outreach programs. However, success rarely comes without its share of obstacles, and Julie soon found herself facing a new set of challenges. One crisp autumn morning, Julie sat in a conference room, presenting her ideas for a new initiative aimed at providing job training and placement services for single parents. Her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and nervousness as she addressed the room full of executives. "By partnering with local businesses and community colleges," Julie explained, pointing to a chart on the screen behind her, "we can create a pipeline of skilled workers while also helping families achieve financial stability." As she finished her presentation, Julie looked expectantly at the faces around the table. Mr. Thornton was smiling broadly, nodding his approval. But several other executives wore skeptical expressions. "It's an admirable idea, Ms. Alvarez," said one man, his tone condescending. "But have you considered the costs involved, the logistics of coordinating with multiple partners?" "And what about the time frame?" another chimed in. "This seems like a very long-term investment with uncertain returns." Julie felt her confidence wavering under their scrutiny. She had anticipated some pushback, but the intensity of their skepticism caught her off guard as she struggled to formulate responses to their rapid-fire questions. She could feel her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Mr. Thornton stepped in, his calm voice cutting through the tension. "I think Julie's proposal has merit. Let's take some time to review the details and reconvene next week for further discussion." As the meeting dispersed, Julie gathered her materials with shaking hands. She felt a gentle touch on her arm and looked up to see Mr. Thornton standing beside her. "Don't let them discourage you, Julie," he said softly. "Your ideas are solid. You just need to learn to defend them more confidently. Remember, you have insights and experiences that many of them lack." Julie nodded, grateful for his support, but still stinging from the criticism. As she walked back to her office, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was out of her depth. The corporate world was so different from anything she had experienced before, and there were moments when she wondered if she truly belonged. That evening, as Julie recounted her day to Sophia and Beatrice over dinner, she found herself glossing over the difficulties of the meeting, focusing instead on the positive aspects of her work. But Sophia, perceptive as ever, sensed her mother's unease. "Mom, is everything okay at work?" she asked, her young face creased with concern. Julie paused, considering how to respond. She had always tried to be honest with her girls, to show them that it was okay to face challenges and admit to struggles. Taking a deep breath, she decided to open up. "You know, sweetie, sometimes even grown-ups have tough days at work," Julie explained. "Today was one of those days for me. I had to present some ideas to a group of important people, and not all of them liked what I had to say." Beatrice looked up from her plate, her eyes wide. "Did they yell at you, Mommy?" Julie chuckled softly. "No, honey, they didn't yell. They just asked a lot of hard questions that I wasn't fully prepared to answer. It made me feel a little small." Sophia reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "But, Mom, you always tell us that it's okay to not have all the answers. You say what's important is trying our best and learning from our mistakes." Julie felt a lump form in her throat at her daughter's words. Once again, the wisdom of her children amazed her. "You're absolutely right, Sophia. Thank you for reminding me of that." As she tucked the girls into bed that night, Julie's mind was already working on ways to improve her presentation and address the concerns raised in the meeting. She realized that this was all part of the growth process. Learning to navigate a new world, to stand her ground and to turn setbacks into opportunities for improvement. The next morning, Julie arrived at the office early, determined to refine her proposal. She spent hours researching, gathering additional data, and practicing her responses to potential objections. When Mr. Thornton stopped by her office to check on her progress, he was impressed by her renewed enthusiasm and thoroughness. "This is excellent work, Julie," he said, reviewing her updated presentation. "You've addressed their concerns while staying true to your original vision. I'm proud of how you've handled this setback." Julie felt a warm glow of pride at his words. "Thank you, Mr. Thornton. I realize that I need to be better prepared to defend my ideas. This isn't just about me, it's about all the families we could help with this program." As she continued to work on her proposal, Julie felt a new sense of confidence growing within her. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, more moments of doubt and difficulty. But she also knew that she had the strength and determination to face them head-on. This experience had taught her a valuable lesson, that growth often comes from discomfort, and that true success lies not in avoiding obstacles, but in learning how to overcome them. With this newfound wisdom, Julie felt more ready than ever to take on whatever challenges lay ahead in her journey to make a difference in the world. As the seasons changed, and Julie's first year at Thornton Enterprises drew to a close, she found herself at the heart of a transformation that was rippling through the community. Her revised proposal for the single-parent job training initiative had not only been approved, but had become one of the company's flagship programs. On a crisp spring morning, Julie stood at the podium in a community center, addressing a room full of single parents eager to participate in the program's first cohort. As she looked out at their faces, some hopeful, some skeptical, all carrying the weight of their struggles, she felt a profound connection to their experiences. "I know many of you might be feeling overwhelmed or unsure right now," Julie began, her voice steady and warm. "I've been where you are. Not too long ago, I was a single mother struggling to make ends meet, wondering how I was going to provide for my children." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But I'm here to tell you that change is possible. With hard work, determination, and the right support, you can create a better future for yourselves and your families. That's what this program is all about, giving you the tools and opportunities to succeed." As Julie outlined the details of the program, the job skills training, the partnerships with local businesses for internships and job placements, the childcare support during training hours, she could see hope kindling in the eyes of her audience. Questions came pouring in, and Julie answered each one with patience and understanding, drawing on her own experiences to offer practical advice and encouragement. After the presentation, as Julie mingled with the participants, a woman approached, her a toddler balanced on her hip. "Ms. Alvarez," she said hesitantly, "I just wanted to thank you. I've been to so many programs and job fairs, but this is the first time I've felt like someone really understands what we're going through." Julie reached out and squeezed the woman's hand. "We're in this together," she said softly. And I promise we're going to do everything we can to help you succeed." As she left the community center that day, Julie felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was why she had taken this job, why she had pushed through the difficult days and moments of self-doubt. She was making a real difference in people's lives. Back at the office, Julie threw herself into expanding and refining the program. She worked tirelessly, coordinating with local businesses, educational institutions, and social services to create a comprehensive support network for the participants. Her dedication didn't go unnoticed. One afternoon, as Julie was poring over some data from the program's first month, Mr. Thornton appeared in her office doorway. "Julie, do you have a moment?" he asked, his expression unreadable. Julie looked up, a flicker of nervousness in her stomach. "Of course, Mr. Thornton, is everything all right?" He entered the office, closing the door behind him. "More than all right, actually. I've been following the progress of your initiative closely, and I have to say, I'm impressed. The feedback from participants and partners has been overwhelmingly positive." Julie felt a flush of pride at his words. "Thank you, sir. It's been a team effort, really." Mr. Thornton shook his head, a smile playing at his lips. "Don't sell yourself short, Julie. Your leadership and vision have been instrumental in making this program a success. In fact, that's what I wanted to talk to you about." He paused, and Julie found herself holding her breath in anticipation. "We're looking to expand our community outreach efforts nationally," Mr. Thornton continued, "and I'd like you to head up the new department. It would mean a significant promotion, more responsibilities, and the chance to implement your ideas on a much larger scale." Julie sat back, stunned. A national role, heading up a department. It was more than she had ever dreamed possible. I don't know what to say, Mr. Thornton," she stammered. "It's an incredible opportunity, but it's also a huge responsibility. Are you sure I'm ready for something like this?" Mr. Thornton's gaze was steady and confident. "Julie, you've more than proven yourself this past year. Your compassion, your innovative thinking, and your ability to connect with the people we're trying to help, these are rare and valuable qualities. I have no doubt that you're ready for this challenge." As the reality of the offer sank in, Julie felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This would be a big step, one that would require even more of her time and energy. She thought of Sophia and Beatrice, of the promises she had made to always put them first. "Can I have a few days to think about it?" she asked. "This would be a big change for my family, and I need to make sure it's the right decision for all." "Servus." Mr. Thornton nodded understandingly. "Of course, take the time you need, but Julie, remember this. Sometimes the greatest act of love we can show our children is to pursue our own dreams and show them what's possible." As Mr. Thornton left her office, Julie sat back in her chair, her mind whirling with possibilities. She thought of all the lives they could touch with a national program, all the families they could help lift out of poverty. But she also thought of the increased demands on her time, the potential for travel, the added stress. That evening, as she tucked Sophia and Beatrice into bed, Julie found herself studying their faces, trying to imagine how this decision would affect their lives. Could she balance this new role with being the mother she wanted to be? As if sensing her mother's inner turmoil, Sophia spoke up. "Mom, is everything okay? You seem worried about something." Julie smiled softly, marveling once again at her daughter's perceptiveness. "I'm not worried, sweetie. I've just been offered a big opportunity at work, and I'm trying to decide if it's the right thing for our family." Beatrice sat up in bed, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Is it a good opportunity, Mommy?" "It's a very good opportunity," Julie replied. "It would mean I could help even more people like we've been doing with the program here, but it would also mean some big changes for us." Sophia was quiet for a moment, her young face thoughtful. "Mom, remember when you took the job with Mr. Thornton? You were scared then too, but look at all the good things that happened. You always tell us to be brave and to help others when we can. Isn't this the same thing?" Julie felt tears prick at her eyes, overwhelmed by her daughter's wisdom and support. She gathered both girls into a tight hug. "You're right, Sophia. Sometimes Mom needs a reminder to follow her own advice. What do you think, girls? Should we take on this new adventure together?" Both Sophia and Beatrice nodded enthusiastically. their eyes shining with excitement at the prospect of a new chapter in their lives. As Julie kissed her daughters goodnight and retreated to her own room, she felt a sense of clarity settling over her. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Julie's office as she sat across from Mr. Thornton, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. She had spent the past few days carefully considering his offer, weighing the potential impact on her family against the opportunity to make a difference on a national scale. "Mr. Thornton," Julie began, her voice steady despite her nerves, "I've given your offer a lot of thought and I've discussed it with my daughters. I'm honored and excited to accept the position." Mr. Thornton's face broke into a wide smile. "I'm thrilled to hear that, Julie. I truly believe you're the right person to lead this expansion of our community outreach programs." As they shook hands to seal the agreement, Julie felt a surge of emotion. This moment represented not just a personal triumph, but a chance to create meaningful change for countless families across the country. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity as Julie prepared to transition into her new role. She worked tirelessly to ensure a smooth handover of her current projects, while also diving into research and planning for the national expansion. One evening, as Julie sat at her kitchen table surrounded by papers and her laptop, Sophia approached, cautiously. "Mom," she asked, her voice tinged with concern, "are you sure you're not working too hard?" Julie looked up, suddenly aware of the late hour and the fact that she had barely spoken to her daughters all evening. A pang of guilt shot through her. "Oh, sweetie, I'm sorry. I guess I got a little carried away." Sophia climbed into the chair next to her mother. "It's okay, Mom. We understand that your work is important. We just miss you sometimes." Julie pulled her daughter into a tight hug, fighting back tears. "Your happiness and well-being will always be the most important thing to me," she said softly. "I promise I'll do a better job of balancing work and family time." As she held Sophia, Julie realized that this would be her greatest challenge moving forward, finding a way to pursue her passion for helping others while still being present for her own family. It was a delicate balance, but one she was determined to master. The day of the official announcement of Julie's promotion arrived, bringing with it a sense of momentous change. As she stood before the assembled staff of Thornton Enterprises, Julie felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. But as she began to speak about her vision for the expanded community outreach programs, her passion and conviction shone through. "We have an incredible opportunity," Julie said, her voice strong and clear, "to take what we've learned from our local initiatives and apply it on a national scale. We can touch the lives of thousands of families, offering them not just assistance, but real pathways to sustainable change." As she outlined her plans for partnering with organizations across the country, for developing tailored programs to address the unique needs of different communities, Julie could see the excitement building in the room. Colleagues who had once viewed her with skepticism were now nodding along, caught up in her enthusiasm and vision. After the presentation, as Julie mingled with her co-workers, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about the new initiatives, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Sarah, the receptionist who had shown her to her office on her very first day. "Julie," Sarah said, her eyes shining with emotion, "I just wanted to tell you how inspiring your journey has been. Watching you go from that nervous, new employee to this," she gestured at Julie's confident stance. "It's amazing. You give hope to all of us who are still trying to find our way." Julie felt a lump form in her throat at Sarah's words. She reached out and squeezed the other woman's hand. "Thank you, Sarah. That means more to me than you know. And remember, we all have the potential to create change. Sometimes we just need the right opportunity to show what we're capable of." As the day wound down and Julie prepared to head home, Mr. Thornton stopped by her office one last time. "You were magnificent today, Julie," he said warmly. "I knew from the moment I saw you stand up to those troublemakers in the coffee shop that you had something special. I'm proud to have you leading this initiative." Julie smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. "Thank you for taking a chance on me, Mr. Thornton. I promise I won't let you down." He shook his head, his expression serious. It's not about letting me down, Julie. It's about staying true to yourself and your vision. Remember why you started this journey, to make a difference in people's lives. As long as you keep that at the heart of everything you do, you'll never go wrong. As Julie left the office that evening, she felt a profound sense of purpose and possibility. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, filled with obstacles and difficult decisions, but she was ready to face whatever came her way, armed with her passion, her experience, and the unwavering support of her daughters. Walking home in the warm evening air, Julie allowed herself a moment to reflect on how far she had come. From a struggling single mother to a leader in corporate social responsibility. It was a transformation she could scarcely have imagined a year ago. Yet here she was, poised to make a real difference in the world. As she approached her apartment building, Julie saw Sophia and Beatrice waiting for her on the front steps, their faces lighting up as they spotted her. In that moment, Julie knew, with absolute certainty, that she had made the right choice. This new chapter in her life wasn't just about her own success. It was about showing her daughters what was possible when you dared to dream big and had the courage to pursue those dreams. With a smile on her face and love in her heart, Julie embraced her girls, ready to face whatever challenges and triumphs lay ahead, together. A year had passed since Julie had taken on her new role as the National Director of Community Outreach at Thornton Enterprises. The months had been a whirlwind of activity, challenges, and triumphs as she worked tirelessly to implement her vision on a national scale. On a crisp autumn morning, Julie stood at the podium in a large convention center, addressing an audience of hundreds, corporate partners, community leaders, and program participants from across the country. This was the first annual conference for Thornton Enterprises' expanded community initiatives, a chance to showcase their progress and chart the course for the future. As Julie looked out at the sea of faces before her, she felt a surge of emotion. Each person in the room represented a story of struggle, resilience, and hope, stories not unlike her own. A little over 2 years ago, Julie began, her voice steady and warm. I was a single mother struggling to make ends meet, wondering how I was going to provide for my children. Today, I stand before you not just as a success story, but as living proof that with the right support and opportunities, we all have the power to transform our lives. She paused, letting her words sink in. But my story is just one of thousands. In the past year, our programs have touched the lives of over 50,000 families across the nation. We've provided job training to more than 10,000 individuals, helped secure employment for 8,000 single parents, and offered educational support to 15,000 children. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the audience. Julie smiled, feeling a swell of pride not just in her own accomplishments, but in the collective effort of everyone involved in making these programs a reality. But numbers only tell part of the story, she continued. The real impact is in the lives changed, the hope restored, the futures brightened. It's in the mother who can now provide for her children without fear of eviction. It's in the father who can pursue his dream of higher education while still supporting his family. It's in the child who now believes that college is within reach. As Julie went on to outline their plans for the coming year, expanding their job training programs, launching a new initiative for rural communities, and partnering with more corporations to create employment pathways, she could see the excitement building in the room. The energy was palpable, a shared sense of purpose and possibility. After her speech, as Julie mingled with attendees during the break, she was approached by a woman she recognized from one of their first training programs in her home city. "Ms. Alvarez," the woman said, her eyes shining with emotion. "I don't know if you remember me, but I was in the first cohort of your job training program last year." Julie smiled warmly, recalling the woman's determined face from those early days. "Of course I remember you, Maria. How are you doing?" Maria beamed. "I'm doing amazing, thanks to you and this program. I not only completed the training, but I've been working as an administrative assistant at a law firm for the past 6 months. My kids are thriving, and for the first time in years I feel like I can breathe, you know?" Julie felt a lump form in her throat. She reached out and squeezed Maria's hand. "I'm so proud of you, Maria. You did all the hard work. We just provided the opportunity. Maria shook her head. You did so much more than that. You showed us that change was possible, that we weren't alone. You gave us hope. As Maria moved on to speak with others, Julie found herself overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had accomplished. It wasn't just about job placements or statistics. It was about restoring dignity, rebuilding lives, and rekindling dreams. Later that evening, as the conference wound down, Julie found a quiet moment to call home. The sound of Sophia and Beatrice's excited voices filled her with warmth as they chatted about their day and asked about the conference. "Mom," Sophia said, her voice taking on a serious tone, "we're really proud of you. You're helping so many people just like you helped us." Julie felt tears prick at her eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart. You and Beatrice are my inspiration, you know that? Everything I do for you." As she hung up the phone, Julie reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From that fateful day in the coffee shop to now, it had been a path filled with challenges, doubts, and difficult choices. But it had also been a journey of growth, of discovering strengths she never knew she possessed, and of realizing that one person really could make a difference. Julie knew that there were still challenges ahead. Expanding their programs would require continued hard work, innovation, and perseverance. There would be setbacks and obstacles to overcome. But as she looked out over the conference hall, at the network of partners and supporters they had built, at the lives they had already changed, she felt a deep sense of hope and determination. This was more than a job or a career. It was a calling, a chance to create ripples of change that would spread far beyond what she could see or imagine. And as Julie gathered her things to head back to her hotel room, she felt a renewed sense of purpose and excitement for what the future held. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it felt like it was just beginning. But Julie was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that she was making a real difference in the world, one life at a time. 5 years had passed since Julie had first stepped into Thornton Enterprises, a nervous single mother grasping at an unexpected opportunity. Now, on a warm spring morning, she found herself back where it all began, the best coffee shop. The cafe had changed little in the intervening years, but Julie's perspective had shifted dramatically. As she stood in line waiting to place her order, she couldn't help but remember that fateful day, when she had stood up to the group of troublemakers, never imagining how that one act of courage would change the course of her life. "Next in line, please," called a familiar voice. Julie stepped forward, a smile spreading across her face as she recognized the barista. "Megan, is that you?" Megan's eyes widened in recognition. "Julie? Oh my goodness, it's been years. How are you?" The two women embraced warmly over the counter, ignoring the impatient shuffling of the customers behind them. "I'm doing well," Julie replied, her eyes twinkling. "Very well, actually. How about you? Are you still—" Megan shook her head, a proud smile on her face. "Nope, I'm the manager now. Took over about 2 years ago when Mr. Thompson retired." Julie felt a surge of happiness for her former co-worker. "That's wonderful, Megan. I'm so happy for you." As Megan prepared Julie's coffee, they caught up briefly on each other's lives. Julie shared a condensed version of her journey with Thornton Enterprises, while Megan spoke of her own growth and the positive changes she'd implemented at the coffee shop. "You know," Megan said, as she handed Julie her drink, "what you did that day, standing up to those kids, it inspired a lot of us. It made me realize that we don't have to just accept things as they are. We can make a difference, even in small ways." Julie felt a lump form in her throat at Megan's words. "Thank you for saying that. Sometimes it's hard to see the impact of our actions in the moment." As Julie turned to leave, Megan called out, "Hey, Julie, thanks for showing us what courage looks like." With a final wave to Megan, Julie stepped out onto the bustling sidewalk. She had come to this part of town for a meeting. Thornton Enterprises was considering acquiring a small tech startup that specialized in educational software, and Julie was there to assess how it might fit into their community outreach programs. As she walked towards the office building where the meeting was scheduled, Julie's mind wandered over the past 5 years. The national expansion of their community initiatives had been a resounding success, touching hundreds of thousands of lives across the country. They had faced challenges along the way: economic downturns, political hurdles, the constant need to innovate and adapt. But through it all, Julie had stayed true to her vision and values. Her daughters, now teenagers, had grown into compassionate, socially conscious young women. Sophia was already talking about studying social work in college, inspired by her mother's work. Beatrice, always the more reserved of the two, had found her voice advocating for environmental causes at her high school. Julie's personal growth had been just as profound. The nervous, self-doubting woman she had once been had blossomed into a confident leader, respected not just within Thornton Enterprises, but in the wider corporate social responsibility community. She had spoken at conferences, advised other companies on developing their own outreach programs, and even testified before Congress on the importance of public-private partnerships in addressing social issues. Yet for all her success, Julie had never forgotten where she came from or the struggles that had shaped her. She made a point of staying connected to the communities they served, of listening to the stories of program participants and using their feedback to continually improve their initiatives. As Julie entered the office building for her meeting, she felt a familiar mix of excitement and determination. This potential acquisition represented a new frontier for their programs, a chance to leverage technology to expand their reach and impact even further. The meeting went well, with the young entrepreneurs behind the startup showing genuine enthusiasm for the possibility of applying their technology to social causes. As Julie left the building a few hours later, her mind was already racing with ideas for how they could integrate this new tool into their existing programs. Walking back towards the bus stop, Julie passed by a small park. She paused, watching a group of children playing on the swings and slides. Among them, she noticed a woman sitting on a bench, looking tired but happy as she watched her child play. Something about the scene tugged at Julie's heart. She approached the woman, smiling warmly. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" The woman looked up, returning Julie's smile. "It is. It's nice to have a moment to just breathe, you know." Julie nodded understandingly. "I remember those days. Single mum." "Is it that obvious?" The woman chuckled ruefully. "Takes one to know one," Julie replied. "Or at least I used to be. It gets better, I promise." The woman's eyes filled with a mix of hope and skepticism. "Does it? Sometimes it feels like I'm just treading water, barely keeping my head up." Julie sat down next to her on the bench. "I know exactly how that feels. A few years ago, I was working as a barista, struggling to make ends meet, wondering how I was going to give my girls the life they deserved." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "Have you heard about the Thornton Enterprises community programs? They have some great resources for single parents: job training, childcare assistance, educational support for kids." The woman's eyes widened with interest. "I've heard of them, but I didn't think... I'm not sure I'd qualify." Julie pulled out a business card and handed it to the woman. "Trust me, it's worth looking into. This is my card. Give me a call if you have any questions or need help navigating the application process." As the woman read the card, her eyes grew even wider. "Wait, you run these programs?" Julie nodded, smiling softly. "I do now. But like I said, not too long ago, I was right where you are. Change is possible. Sometimes we just need a little help to get started." As Julie stood to leave, the woman grabbed her hand. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means." Julie squeezed her hand in return. "You're welcome, and remember, you're stronger than you know. Don't ever give up on your dreams or your ability to create a better life for you and your child." As Julie walked away from the park, she felt a profound sense of coming full circle. From a struggling single mother to a leader helping others overcome the same challenges she had faced, it was a journey she could scarcely have imagined that day in the coffee shop. The sun was setting as Julie finally arrived home, casting a warm golden glow over the modest but comfortable house she now shared with her daughters. As she walked up the path, She could hear laughter spilling out from the open windows. Inside, she found Sophia and Beatrice in the kitchen, attempting to cook dinner. The counters were dusted with flour, and something that smelled suspiciously, like burnt garlic, wafted from the stove. "Mom," Beatrice exclaimed, her face lighting up. "You're just in time. We're making... Well, we're not entirely sure what we're making anymore, but it's going to be great." Julie laughed, hanging up her coat and rolling up her sleeves. "I'm sure it will be. Need some help?" As they worked together to salvage dinner, chatting and laughing about their days, Julie felt a wave of contentment wash over her. This moment of simple joy with her daughters was what it had all been for. Later that evening, as they sat around the dinner table enjoying their slightly charred but made-with-love meal, Sophia looked at her mother thoughtfully. "Mom," she said, "I've been thinking about what I want to do after high school. I think I want to go into social work, like what you do, helping people change their lives." Julie felt her heart swell with pride. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. It's challenging work, but so rewarding." Beatrice piped up, "And I want to study environmental science. I think if we're going to really help communities, we need to address environmental issues too." Julie looked at her daughters, marveling at the passionate, socially conscious young women they had become. "I'm so proud of both of you," she said softly. "You know, when I took that job with Mr. Thornton all those years ago, I was terrified. I didn't know if I could do it, if I was making the right choice for our family. But seeing you now, hearing your dreams, I know it was the right decision." Sophia reached out and squeezed her mother's hand. "You showed us what it means to be brave, Mum. To stand up for what's right and to never stop trying to make things better." As they continued their meal, the conversation flowing easily between them, Julie reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. There had been struggles and sacrifices along the way, moments of doubt and fear, but there had also been joy, growth, and the immeasurable satisfaction of knowing that she was making a real difference in the world. From that fateful day in the coffee shop to now, Julie had discovered strength she never knew she possessed, faced challenges she never imagined she could overcome, and touched lives in ways she had never dreamed possible. And through it all, she had shown her daughters and herself that with courage, determination, and a willingness to reach out and grasp unexpected opportunities, anything was possible. As the evening wound down and Julie prepared for bed, she paused by the window looking out at the quiet street. The future stretched out before her, full of promise and possibility. There would be new challenges to face, new lives to touch, new changes to make in the world. But Julie was ready for whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that she had the strength, the support, and the passion to make a difference. With a smile on her face and gratitude in her heart, Julie turned away from the window. Tomorrow was a new day, another chance to create ripples of change that would spread far beyond what she could see or imagine, and she couldn't wait to see what it would bring. You might also like one of the 2 videos on your screen. Feel free to watch them now or subscribe to the channel to watch them later. Thanks for watching.